I'm Jim Mason. I'm the co-author with Peter Singer of a book, Animal Factories, and the text talks about the problems of what we call factory farming. Brings the techniques and the strategies of mass production to the raising of animals for meat, milk, and eggs. And I started following this trend in American agriculture in the early 1970s. My childhood was spent on a family farm where we had several pigs, several cows, several chickens, milked cows by hand, so-called old-fashioned family farm. And so I was shocked when I discovered in the 70s that there was this thing called factory farming. So I was so intrigued that I began to study it intensively. All of that led to the writing and the publication of the book Animal Factories with Peter Singer. And in that book, we really found four things bad about factory farming. It harms animals because of the strict confinement. The idea is to put large numbers of animals in a confined space so that it takes less labor. The only true efficiency of a factory farm is that it reduces the labor inputs. But this is hard on the animals because they're more likely to stress, which leads to diseases, which then requires the factory farmer to use drugs, medications, additives, special kinds of feeds. Now, how it harms the consumer is that some of these medicines, if you want to call them that, or these growth promotants, can end up in the food chain. Consumers have to be very careful these days about eating animal products because of the possibility that there might be a drug residue or a hormone in the milk. The impacts on the land, you have enormous problems with sewage, with the waste generated. Like one chicken factory can generate enough manure, would be the equivalent of a small town. And that manure are not adequately processed. They don't go to a sewer treatment plant. Very often they're either dumped on the land or they're confined in what they call a lagoon or a pond-like facility. And they don't always hold water. Sometimes the waste products end up in the groundwater and attract flies and pests. So the factory farm is a kind of an environmental disaster. And of course they generate smells that in the summertime you can smell them from miles away. And finally, the impact that I felt most personally was that the intensification of agriculture really took away animal production from small family farms. Not that life was always that great for animals on family farms, but at least they had some freedom of movement. They weren't kept in such large numbers. They had access to the outdoors. They didn't create pollution problems. They generally had natural health without additives and hormones and artificial shortcuts to animal health. Animal farming is now owned by large corporations like Tyson and ConAgra and many large corporations that were like pharmaceutical companies or feed companies that found that they could really own these places and hire people to do what farmers used to do. One of the worst things wrong with it is that it's really affecting the climate. Animals generate methane and carbon dioxide, and then there's all the waste products from the slaughterhouse. And the cropland that has to be devoted, 80-90% of the corn and soybean crop is going to feed chickens and pigs and dairy cows. These are impacts on the land that aren't immediately visible. You have to look at the big picture and the contribution to climate change. And as we have expanding meat production, expanding animal product consumption around the world, we're really vastly multiplying our impact on the planet in terms of the use of water, the use of cropland, which removes other animals, other species, it removes natural habitat. And then by removing all of this stuff, we're also at the same time dumping into the environment, dumping methane, dumping carbon dioxide, dumping greenhouse gases, and it's ever increasing. So these are the unseen costs. And as an attorney, I'm also appalled too at how easily this has been done without any regulation. I sense that in other parts of the world the same thing is being done. This is seen as progress. Give people more meat, give them more milk, give them more eggs. This is equated with better nutrition. And we're finding out 40, 50, 60 years later that this is not good nutrition. It's contributed to obesity. We're polluting our environment, our waters, and our atmosphere. So one should take a very careful look at the true cost of cheap meat, milk, and eggs, because they are really destroying our health and the health of our environment.